came into Christianity because of the evidence. You see, I started off as an atheist, and because I thought it was true. And I wanted the truth. I've always been a seeker of truth, mainly because my family, when I was younger, was nothing but liars, and I could not stand liars. So I always wanted to know the truth. I became an atheist because I thought it was true. Excuse me. So when I was confronted by my uncle, who only had a 6th grade education, about biological facts of animals and life, and I couldn't answer his questions, that really upset me. I said, you know what? I'm going to prove you wrong, old man. 2 years later, I'm at the foot of the cross, knowing that there's a creator, that we were designed for a purpose, and now I got to find mine. And that's how I started down this path.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, that's a wonderful story. Outstanding. Godless Girl, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. Of course, it's always a pleasure. Please feel free to introduce yourself. Tell the audience.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of Mr. Batman, but I really liked his recent debate with Aron Ra. That's why I want to come on here with him. I'm an atheist, but my fellow atheists hate me because I'm always exposing them for being. I think that Christians actually win the majority of debates in the debate community against the atheists, and I just see that they're so biased. It's really annoying. I was saying earlier, all these Aron Ra fans, like in the comments, like trying to defend him saying the dumb shit that he did. It's just so ridiculous. So I actually like attacking atheists more than I do Christians because I hate the dishonesty. I actually used to be, when I first joined the debate community, I think one of the reasons I hate them so much is because I used to be one of them. I used to be really biased. I used to be an Aron Ra fan. Oh my God, like I'm embarrassed to fucking say that. And I was like, people like the Four Horsemen, like Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris, is like gods. I thought they were gods. And now they say the dumbest shit and their fans are even dumber. It's just ridiculous. Aron Ra, Aron Ra has said, I don't know why he tries to have these arguments. I mean, I guess with Mr. Batman, it was kind of more about science. Some of it was, but he often tries to debate like presuppositionalism, which is just ridiculous because he does know a lot of science, but he self-admittedly doesn't care about philosophy and doesn't know any philosophy. So when he goes up against presuppositionalists, he looks like such a fucking clown because I don't think he even understands the argument. And and it's so ridiculous. He's a fucking clown.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably why I have found an affinity with you, Godless, because I actually respect the honest atheists. It's the atheists that want to be dishonest, that want to stick to bad arguments and bad claims just because they think it gives them a justification for non-theistic stances. Okay, it's very hard to respect those people. You, TRN, Jack, I respect you guys. You really do tend to want to converse in an honest, intelligent way. And so I appreciate that. And I appreciate you, truly.
Oh, as do I, Miss Godless.
Smokey Saint's going to put the link in the description that Mr. Batman has the Bat Cave. He's usually around in the mornings in my Discord server if anyone ever wants to come debate him.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, please. I am going to put after the show, I didn't put that in before this, but after the show, I'm going to put Godless's Discord in the description. Please go down, click on it, join her Discord. If you'd like to interact with her or any of the people in her community, or even Mr. Batman himself in the mornings, what better privilege could you hope for? Go click on that link, go in there and find some wonderful expositional engagements. Absolutely.
And MrBatman.com.
And MrBatman.com. Absolutely. And I even went to your site, sir. Very nice. I really enjoyed it.
You have your own phone line for people to call in, don't you?
Absolutely. And again, I tell people that I really want them to know the gospel. I have told people that, hey, if you want to have a discussion with me, you don't want to do it online, there's a little coffee shop right on the corner here. I'll buy you a cup of coffee and sit down with you and go over the truth of what God's word says. My name, my phone number, my address, everything is on my website. I am honest and open about who I am because I am a street preacher as well. I love to preach the good news of the gospel everywhere I am at all times.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Love to hear it. Well, you know what? I don't hear many YouTubers or many apologists being willing to be quite that approachable. So kudos on you, sir. I commend your character. Thank you for that. Okay, well, I think then we're ready to maybe get the video started. And like I said before, guys, any point you want to make a comment or a statement, just tell me. I'll pause it. No worries. And we'll go ahead and get started. Unless anyone has any questions or statements before we get going.
Well, let me say just one thing real
sure.
quick.
Go ahead, please.
Again, when Aron wanted to actually have this debate, he said he wanted to do it on creationism and how it's unscientific. And I told him, wait a minute, I am a substitute teacher. I teach science and apologetics. And he asked me, well, wait a minute, those are two opposing positions. And then I love science. I want to know about science. And he proclaims to know all these things. And yet, I think what he doesn't understand is the foundation for his argument. The foundation must be an eternal, universal, and unchanging lawgiver God. And he recognizes that when we get to one point in here, and we'll point that out.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Okay, excellent. Well, we'll go ahead and crack at it. Here we go.
And that it wouldn't be a valid reason for you to believe that there was a creator. So what was...
Well, actually, sir, he asked me about information. Specified complex arrangement of symbols that perform a function or convey a message utilizing a transmitter, a receiver, and an agreed upon language. Now, of course, he had a 6th grade education and he was from the country, so he didn't say it like that. But basically, that's what he was asking me. And so, sir, when we look at this genetic information that's in our bodies that makes us who we are, 3 billion base pairs. Now, sir, how do you account for this information? How do you account for communication systems such as in our brains? We have a transmitter neuron, a receiver neuron, and the synapse, not to mention the signal that goes across that synapse. Which one of those evolved first, and how do you know? You can make all these speculations.
But it was consciousness that evolved before any of these things.
I would love to talk to you about that. Where does consciousness come from?
Consciousness pre-exists pretty much everything. Consciousness pre-exists pretty much everything. Consciousness pre-exists.
Okay, I think we have to. This is an organic moment to have some comments here, isn't it? Please, Mr. Batman, please elaborate here a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, he's sitting there and I'm asking him about the physical world. I'm asking him about how things work. And he says, consciousness has always existed. And then he's going to appeal back to things he cannot even know. But wait a minute. If consciousness has always existed, that means it pre-exists time, space, and matter. That means that it is eternal, universal, and unchanging. Oh, wait a minute. That's a theistic position. And so now he's just left the realm of atheism and he just became a theist. As a matter of fact, I believe I mentioned to him, I said, you are now a theist. You just don't know the name of your God.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Because he sticks by it. He doesn't ever take it back. So, Mr. Batman, do you think he's just really dumb, or do you think he accidentally misspoke but didn't want to admit that he made a mistake? So he just doubled down.
I think what happens with people like this is they make it up as they go along, since they don't really have knowledge. And let's look at that real quick. Knowledge is a justified, true belief. This is why I love philosophy. In order for you to truly know something, not only must it be true, but it must be justifiable. You must be able to create a chain of evidence from wherever you start your foundation to the truth statement that you're trying to make. Well, wait a minute, since he doesn't know the truth, he just made this up on the fly. Now, just like you said, then he realizes, wait a minute, what have I done here? I can't back up. I can't say I didn't say that, and I can't retract that statement. So now he doubles down. That's why he did that, because he's making it up as he goes along. If you look at his videos, when he talks about phylogeny and all these other things, he's made up this stuff as he goes along. No, if you say anything with enough authority, people will believe it.
Very true. Very true. Now, Godless said something interesting that I think we can use to take this a little bit full circle. She said that Aron Ra doesn't really care about philosophy. And I've heard Aron Ra admit that he doesn't really care about philosophy. Does Aron Ra not appreciate the fact that there is massive amounts of philosophy required to come to conclusions of scientific data?
And what's really funny is actually when I asked him a question, he said, well, philosophers say this. I said, I didn't ask philosophers. I asked you.
Exactly.
And he said, well, if you're not going to take the advice of philosophers. And then he also denied basic laws of nature, such as the second law of thermodynamics. I mean, this is one of the most well-founded and fundamental laws in our physical world. Everything decays over time. I got him to admit all the premises of the second law of thermodynamics, but then he's going to reject the fact that all time, space, and matter had a beginning. This is very important because
it is.
If you see that everything decays over time, that means we're going to a maximum state of entropy. What's that mean? That means we're going from a state of workable, usable energy to no workable, usable energy. We are going from a state of order to disorder. That means something originally created all time, space, and matter, wound it up to the least amount of entropy so it could wind down to the least amount of entropy. This tells us that the universe had a beginning. Why? Because if the universe was infinitely old, if it had always been here, guess what? There would be no heat differences between anything in our universe. There is a huge heat difference between the big ball, the yellow ball in the center of our solar system called the sun, and our moon. There's a huge heat difference between those two things. That means they could not have been there for an infinite amount of time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's a really poignant point. Godless, do you have anything to add?
Well, this is a little off topic, but it's something that was said at the very beginning of the video. Made me think of an argument. Mr. Batman was talking about genetic information, where I thought of an argument you could use against the atheists that they would have, Aron Ra would have no idea how to respond to. So it's really simple. Premise 1, DNA is a code. Premise 2, but code by definition, just Google the definition. I just did actually. It's a system of letters, words, or symbols. It's for the purpose that have a purpose, but to represent something, to convey information. So by definition, purpose, if something has a purpose, it had to be intended, right? So intended by a mind. So that's the argument. So so DNA is the code, therefore, and code by definition had to be intended. Therefore, DNA was intended by a mind.
As a matter of fact, one of the things I brought up is that very thing. I said, again, information. I love basic definition. See, I teach at an elementary school. I love that because I have an elementary mind. I need to get down to the foundations. I need to get down to the very basics of how things work. Let's look at what the definition of information is. Just like you said, it's symbolic. Information is specified complex arrangement of symbols that perform a function or convey a message utilizing a transmitter, a receiver, and an agreed upon language. We're never going to get that far because he can't get past symbolic relationships. When you have something like the G, T, A, and C in your genetic code, this is a symbolic relationship. It represents something else in the physical world other than itself. Just like when you look at my name, Mr. Batman, the M in Mr. Batman represents the sound in the physical world. So that M is representing something other than itself in the physical world. You only get that symbolic relationship of information from an intelligent source.
Absolutely. And I believe that kind of goes in line with the argument. Maybe it's a more simplistic version, or you can correct me. It's not just the manifestation of the letters and symbols. It's the language that they represent.
Absolutely.
Am I correct there?
Absolutely.
Because with the letters and symbols by themselves, the information itself is meaningless without a means of which for it to be interpreted, for it to mean something.
Absolutely. And see, what we're talking about here is the highest form of information. Philosophically speaking, you have specified complex arrangement of symbols that if you change one little thing, it changes the entire message. Because when you have 3 billion base pairs, your genetic code is about that long. When you have 3 billion base pairs, this is like writing, an encyclopedia or writing a story like the Bible in code on a string, beads on a string. You miss one bead, it changes the rest of the information. Let me give you an example. This is pretty cool. If you say to your grandfather, "Let's eat, Grandpa," well, that's "let's eat, comma, Grandpa." Now, if you take out that comma, what happens? "Let's eat, Grandpa." You just became a cannibal. You changed the comma. That's all you did.
Absolutely. No, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. And it does matter, and especially the usages of the information and how it's manifested. That's a beautiful point. I love that anecdote. That's beautiful. Okay. All right. Well, let's see some more of this embarrassment. It's beautiful. I love this. Godless, thank you for doing that thing where you replayed that over and over in that portion just to make sure it drilled it in. That's a little bit of salt in the wound, but beautiful call, girl. Love
May I
that.
say one thing too?
Oh yeah,
because
sure, please.
when you did that, Miss Godless, he was not going to post this. He did not want to post it. He had actually even I sent him an email. I said, hey, I'm not seeing our conversation on your site. Is there a problem? Here's a link to mine if you had a problem. He goes, oh, no, you were just not worth even talking to. I'm not posting it on there. Well, then not long after Miss Godless posted that, apparently he'd gotten a few comments and questions about this particular video. Now it's on his YouTube channel and has almost 11,000 views. Wow. Thank you very much, Mr. Ra.
Indeed. He just made you famous. Beautiful, beautiful. Well played, sir. I love that.
It's pretty much.
Oh, you know what he did after I posted it too?
Yeah, go ahead, Godless.
I'll take a screenshot. He blocked me on Twitter. Here.
No.
Yeah.
You're blocked on Twitter? Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm gonna tweet it right now. The screenshot of him blocking me. Isn't that hilarious?
After this, he blocked you on Twitter. That's amazing. What kind of a bit of a hissy fit? That's incredible. What a thing. Yeah, post that. Okay. All right. We'll let the video play on here a little bit. Let's.
You have
so you have a God. You're not an atheist.
No. There's
Beautiful.
no
so what is consciousness?
Anthropomorphic immortal. There's no magical anthropomorphic immortal in my perspective.
Okay, great.
Okay. Do you see how he does that? Now, I do want to draw attention to that for a moment. That's an attempt to just draw it to a simplified mockery straw man version of what the actual claim is so that he doesn't have to actually deal with it. It's a very infuriating tactic of his. Would you agree, Mr. Batman?
Oh, absolutely. But me being Mr. Batman and loving to be like a bird dog, I've got a bone. I ain't letting go of it, Jack.
Oh, beautiful. Let's watch. Let's watch. Let's see how it unfolds here. Beautiful.
So what is consciousness if it's always existed?
You can find evidence of consciousness in the most basic of living organisms, even those.
But wait a minute. You said it's always existed. Now, how do you know it's always existed? You made a claim. I would like for you to back that up.
There are some philosophers who now hold that a rock.
I'm not talking to some philosophers, sir. I'm talking to you. Well, you made a claim. Would you please back it up?
You are talking about philosophy, so all I can
do is philosophy
cite
101,
right? So if I'm not allowed to cite philosophers on philosophy, then you couldn't ask me a question then.
Sir, we're talking about reality. Now, I could make up anything about reality. I'd be happy to. Again, we're talking about reality, things that we observe.
Getting back to the answer I was trying to give you, you can find evidence of consciousness even in animals, even in organisms that don't have a brain. And I've shown a number of demonstrations of this. I mean, one is a prokaryote. I'm trying to remember what the prokaryote organism is, but it doesn't matter. Being engulfed by an amoeba, and it doesn't have any kind of a sensory system at all, but it has a fight or flight response when it realizes, when it detects the chemical signature that has now been engulfed in an amoeba and tries to escape. So there's an attempt at self-defense there, even before there's any kind of a concept of the self. And then famously you have slime mold, which is another single cellular organism that has demonstrated in tests with mazes and such that it has a means of reason, that it has a means of memory. And this is, again, without any kind of a synapse. So once you have synaptic ability, which are just heightened over what is the base, then you can build a greater consciousness.
But didn't you say consciousness has always existed?
Yeah.
Okay. Always pre-exists the physical.
Look at what has happened. Look at what he has been forced to say because he headed down a path and you're not going to let him escape it. Mr. Batman, that's beautiful.
No, Mr. Batman, even though he calls him back out on that, he does stay on point for a minute. Mr. Batman, you should have, he weasels out of it right after this, what we're about to watch. You shouldn't have let him get out of it. You should have stayed on him next time. You need a rematch.
Yeah,
I doubt he'll let me do that.
You know what? You need a moderated rematch. You should challenge him on Modern Day Debate. That should be your first deal. Finish up the blood feud a little bit, I think.
That would be great.
That would be great. Okay.
Always.
100%. You're not talking about 100% for all things.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay. That's not always then.
That is always. If you have always some degree, and then you have increased degree over time, then there's a total
always some degree. But wait a minute. Yeah. Why is there something rather than nothing? You see, because from nothing comes. Hang on a second, sir. Hang on a second. Please.
Well, you asked the question.
Yes.
I already told you the answer.
I'm sorry,
it's
sir.
It's not possible for there to be nothing.
But unfortunately, your answer doesn't make sense in the real world.
I think Lawrence Krauss, with his 10 different types of nothing, would disagree with him. What do you think?
Oh yeah.
Well, to be complete.
See, Lawrence Krauss in the philosophy, nothing means the absence of everything. And with Lawrence Krauss, nothing, he's not talking about the philosophical nothing. He thinks nothing is like some particles or some bullshit. And even in the first chapter of the name of his book is A Universe from Nothing. And the name of his first chapter is Nothing is Something, which is just false by definition in philosophy.
So he names 10 different types of nothing that are actually something. Isn't that brilliant?
Yeah, when Aron Ra, you should have asked him when he said it's impossible for nothing to exist or something. You should have asked him what the argument was for that.
No, you really probably could have nailed it, because again, that would have been pure philosophy right there. So that would have been interesting.
It was interesting. Aron Ra said originally, he said consciousness pre-exists almost everything, and then when Mr. Batman went back to that, Aron Ra should have been like clever enough to try to realize he fucked up and try to weasel out of it, but he made it worse because he had said almost everything, and then he made a stronger claim, which is always existed. He said consciousness has always existed. So like before the Big Bang, it existed. What the fuck?
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, what was amazing, and Batman, he's got him there, and so then he's giving you examples of single cell organisms. What's the point of that if he's still arguing consciousness is before the single cell organisms? Why did he even bother talking about them?
Exactly. Because always means always, before any time. So that means it would pre-exist all time, space, and matter. It would pre-exist any precariates or precoids, whatever he called it. I'm just laughing at this point because I'm like, to be completely honest, I've known this man for a little while. I've known of him. I've never met him before or anything. I've never even spoken with him before. But when the Creation Museum opened, the very first day, he had formed a protest up there. And so I've known of him since the beginning. Yeah, he actually protested the opening of the Creation Museum because it wasn't right to teach creation to children. So I'm like, okay, so I know of him, and I knew he was pretty famous. I knew he's been on a lot of debates. So to be completely honest, I was a wee bit nervous about dealing with him. But as I'm talking to him, I'm laughing inside. I'm like, I cannot believe how easy this is.
Yeah,
it's outstanding. Yeah, 1 Corinthians 1, the foolish things of the world to shame the wise.
I interrupt a lot, guys. I'm trying to do that again.
No, it's okay, God. Let's go ahead. No, I want that. Go ahead.
Atheist champion. This is one of their champions. The atheist community. It's an embarrassment to atheists that this is one of their champions. It's an embarrassment to humanity.
All right. Yeah, no, it's not a good look for you guys when this is kind of the loudest voice, truth be told. Like, and that's kind of what I notice tends to happen is a lot of movements tend to get, hijacked by the fringe because they just happen to be a little bit louder than a lot of the mainstream members. And you might have a little bit of that issue here. So it's good for atheists to not be like cult members, like we're going to read some of these comments through a little bit later, but that you actually be willing to be honest. When one of your people has a poor performance, stand up and admit it. Don't be a cultist, proving that you're actually an irrational person and not worth dealing with. When one of your people does something stupid or idiotic, be willing to be honest and call it out. We'll be able to respect you and your opinions and your arguments a lot better. We won't have to regard you as irrational religious nut jobs. So consider that.
That's why I kept asking him the question. Well, wait a minute. Again, you're making these claims. How do you know it to be true? What is truth? What is knowledge? You're making these claims about consciousness always existing. Well, wait a minute. Where does that come from? What is your chain of evidence for that? Because it's just basic science. And for him, somebody who claims to know as much science as he claims to know, he sure didn't know the basics of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah,
it's
I agree.
funny that you said the loudest voice because there was no pun intended, but he actually does have he's fucking always screaming. He's really calm here. I don't know if he's on some Xanax or what, but Aron Ra is not being by himself, right? He's usually screaming so loud his mic is cutting out.
There was a video, Godless, you had posted where he actually broke his own voice. He was yelling so bad.
Yeah, well, that was an old video of him debate Inside 10. And he had just come from the Reason rally where he was screaming at atheists. So it's really funny. He was trying to scream at Aron Ra, but his voice was all hoarse because he had been at the Reason rally. At the Reason rally.
That was funny. That was a funny take.
Have you seen the video of him screaming at me?
Yeah, I did. Oh, you put a no. I posted on your channel. I'm like, Godless, this is incredible. I think it was only like 4 or 5 minutes long, but it was outstanding. It was beautiful. Like you just put him in his place, and he had nothing to say to you. It was incredible. Yeah, please, everyone that sees this video, go to Godless's channel and look up some of her recent content, especially with that video with Aron Ra. It was hilarious. It's so worth it.
Oh yeah, I also had there's also Darth Dawkins calling Mr. Batman's a retard.
A retard. Oh,
yes.
Unbelievable. Well, yeah, we can respond to that a little bit after this. For sure. I'd love to, because you know what? He shared something about me too. Maybe we could play both of them back to back. That'll be entertaining. Okay.
Honestly, though, if Darth Dawkins debated Aron Ra would get destroyed.
Well, and you know what? Here's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get Darth Dawkins to debate me. He's afraid of me. He runs from me every time.
He doesn't want to debate. He doesn't want to debate other theists because his theology is very, very unsophisticated. He does not know much about the Bible or the gospel or Jesus for that matter.
Absolutely.
He knows presuppositional arguments, and that's about it. So, because that's what he's poured himself into entirely. So no, I even have offered to debate him and sent him messages in Discord requesting to debate him on stream. He's never responded. So it is what it is.
GG called me a well-known troll. I had to put it on some t-shirts. I want to know what he means by that. You should try to watch your comments, Smokey stream. People like when you engage the audience.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
I'm always really bad at that.
I do keep an eye on it. I mean, in fact, when people put something like that's interesting to what we're talking about, I actually put it on screen on the StreamYard.
Oh, okay.
So I make them part of it. I do that on occasion. And by the way, guys, in comments, I do apologize if I'm not getting to all of you, but again, I mean, I'm host and producer and everything, and I have a show to focus on. So I do try to focus on it. If I look over and I see something interesting, I will either engage or put it on stream. So just bear with me. Okay. Are we ready to get back to it?
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
In real time, because if we're going to look at things, would you agree that you're using logic right now to try and come to these conclusions?
Yeah, necessarily so.
Okay. So logic, where does it come from? Logic is eternal, universal, and unchanging. The law of identity is actually in the Bible. So is the law of non-contradiction, the law of excludability. All of these laws are in the Bible. As a matter of fact, hang on a second, please. Hang on just a second. So, sir, all of these laws are in the Bible. Now, these laws are eternal, universal, and changing. Now, due to the law of cause and effect, do you accept the law of cause and effect?
I have to wonder about your reference to the Bible being, that the laws of logic.
Your question. You just totally ignored your question.
What happened?
He asked Mr. Batman about cause and effect, and he totally ignored the question.
Yeah, no, he jumped right away.
His fans in the comments were saying that Mr. Batman was the one that didn't answer questions. That's not true at all.
That's not true at all. In fact, Mr. Batman was the only one that was trying to stay on point. In fact, if Aron Ra had just stayed on point, he would have been destroyed in even shorter order. This video wouldn't have even needed to be 9 minutes of discomfort. It could have been over in 3 minutes, and he wouldn't have had to make such an embarrassment of himself trying to dig himself out of his hole he made.
That is so true.
Running away in the end, you could have made him run away quicker.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Actually, I was warned in advance that when you get him on the ropes, and that's a boxing terminology, once you get him on the ropes, that he tends to run. I was really trying to get it to play out for a little bit longer. I was trying to make it more conversational because, and Miss Godless, you know me in the past, I've recently changed my technique. I used to go right for the jugular. It didn't matter who it was, what your position was. I would go right for the jugular of every situation. Do what? Okay, I'll be right there. But anyway,
tell her I said hi.
Miss Godless Girl says hi, honey. And my wife's name really is Robin. So together we are Batman and Robin. So yeah, it's a sickness. What must I say? I've been telling people that I've been collecting Batman things for well over 40 years. And she is the prize of my collection.
Outstanding. What a beautiful thing. What a beautiful thing. Well, congratulations, sir. That's outstanding.
Thank you.
Wonderful. And super cute, the Batman and Robin thing. I do you use it everywhere? Do you go out and just kind of have that be your thing? Oh, there it is. There it is.
Oh no, she won't tattoo herself.
That's a beautiful thing. I love it. All right, let's get back to the video.
And so often, but that's regardless.
Do you agree with the law of cause and effect?
Yeah.
Great. Where does that law come from, and why does it never change over time?
Again, we go back to the original error that you made at the very beginning of this that I corrected at the onset. If something is eternal, it didn't come from anywhere.
Well, wait a minute.
And may I say something real quick right here?
So you're saying the natural physical laws, called law of cause and effect, existed before the universe existed?
That's what he agreed to. Now he's stating if something is eternal, it doesn't need to have a reason. But wait a minute, that's not true, because everything that we see in the physical world is an effect. And due to the law of cause and effect, every effect must have an adequate cause. So since we see these laws of cause and effect in the physical world, guess what? We need to have a reason for them. That's called your justification. Now, these laws don't change over time. Laws of physics don't change over time. But wait a minute, we live in a world that's constantly changing over time. This is why he has to reject the second law of thermodynamics, because it dictates that everything in the physical world decays over time. If the physical world does decay over time, and it does, then the physical world cannot be the source of laws that do not change over time. That violates the law of cause and effect.
That is a beautiful point, sir, and a very, very solid argument. Yeah, I like that. Godless, what do you think?
Oh, so I was distracted.
No, it's okay. Godless had a moment. It's okay. It's fine. No, that was a wonderful take, sir. That's actually
Thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah. No, even the idea that, our naturalistic universe has to follow naturalistic laws, that has connotations. And the connotations can be discerned through philosophy, which again, Aron Ra seems to have no respect for.
Well, one of the other things I like to talk about when I'm asking people like this who reject things is cosmological constants. Cosmological constants, just 4 of them, would be the strong and weak nuclear force, then the force of gravity, and the force of magnetism. These things, just the 4 of them together, are so finely tuned to allow functionality in our universe that if you knock them, well, they're finely tuned to within 1/1000% of accuracy as it is. And then if they ever changed, then guess what? Then we're not here to function anymore, because they would not be, they would not function to allow us to have life, to have us, to have ability to do things. Sorry, I got distracted as well. I got to get this other screen off my computer here. Yeah.
Oh no, yeah, no, take your time, take your time. And by the way, we'll just stick here and do this as long as you guys want, because I'm open all night. And if we ended up wrapping up early, I was going to do a different review stream anyway. So feel free, take as much time as you guys like.
Okay,
for sure.
I'm good.
Okay, beautiful. All right, get it going again.
World. The physical world changes over time. Would you agree we see things decay and die over time? Okay. So these laws of logic, are they abstractions of a mind?
They are, the laws that we understand them are what humans have worked out. And that's why some of the laws that we worked out turned out to be wrong.
I'm not talking about some of the ones that we worked out. I'm talking about the law of identity, the law of non-contradiction, the law of excluded
we worked out. Some of them we worked out correctly.
We've discovered them. We didn't create them. Is that correct?
How is it relevant that they were wrong? How is it relevant that they were wrong about some of the laws relevant to anything Mr. Batman is saying?
Exactly.
This is a classic dodge, because I'm asking him about the classical laws of logic, the law of identity, non-contradiction, and excluded middle. And he's going to go talk about something else. He does this in a couple different times in this debate. He wants to deflect from the actual question, because if he admits that these laws are eternal, universal, and unchanging, and I also point out to him a little bit in this video as well, that they're also necessary for the physical world to function. They're not just mind games. They're not just abstractions of our mind, because our mind changes over time. They're an abstraction of an eternal, universal, and unchanging mind. Ooh, that'll preach.
Indeed. And he's basically conceded to that when he said that there's consciousness before everything. So there has to be something for that, from all that consciousness to stem from, which is incredible. Yeah, no, that beautiful point. Well said, Mr. Batman. Well said.
Darth Dawkins Debunked is in the live chat.
Oh, he is. Welcome. Welcome, Dee. Good to see you. Thanks for stopping in. Give Darth Dawkins Debunked a shout out. He's got a neat website and a really cool quiz. Go check it out.
I wonder if Darth Dawkins Debunked would ever be interested in debating Mr. Batman. I think didn't you say you had something about Mr. Batman, or no, you had something about Matt Slick, I think he had. But He opposes presuppositionalists a lot. That would be it.
I've had a couple conversations with him. I don't know if he's really keen about wanting to do it like publicly, like on stream, but I found him very approachable and conversational in person and private. Maybe you do want to set something up with him. He is very deep thinking, Mr. Batman, for sure.
Super. Well, one thing also I want to point out too is I am not a presuppositionalist. I do use some presuppositional argumentation, but I am what's called a covenantal apologist. That is, I know that we have a covenant with the living God. This is Genesis 8, chapter 8, verse 22, Hebrews chapter 1. If you don't have a covenant with the living God, then you cannot justify where these eternal, universal, and unchanging laws come from, because God promised us that in Genesis 8, verse 22. This is, again, the uniformity of nature. I asked him about that as well. Where does the uniformity of nature come from? He can't answer any of these questions.
Yeah, and I've kind of seen maybe a little bit of a trend lately, and Mr. Batman, you can tell me if you think you agree with this. Godless Girl, you too. That it seems like the Calvinists have hijacked presuppositionalism because they are incapable of arguing in any other format. And now they've taken what used to be a tool in a toolbox and turned it into the whole tool shed. What do you think?
Right.
Yeah, that's what I love about you, Smokey, is you're like me, even though I attack my fellow atheists, even though I'm an atheist, and you like to expose your fellow Calvinists.
I like bad. I like to expose bad arguments, no matter where they come from, because here's
exactly
a bad argument from a Christian is a bad witness. That's just there's just no way around that. If you're very philosophically or theologically unsophisticated, many times it's better if you just don't open your mouth at all. There's something to be said for studying to show yourself approved for every good work unto God. So, it's good to take a stance of making sure you approach with a certain respect of preparedness before you start going out there, because sometimes you can do more damage than good.
And even the fool looks wise when he stays silent. That's in the book of Psalms.
Amen. Absolutely. Completely agree. Beautiful points. Let's turn to we do have a couple comments here. I just want to make sure we don't have anything poignant here. We have Theodore coming in. There is not a single law of identity. There is the indiscernibility of identicals for all X and Y. If X equals Y, then for every property, PX has P. If Y has P. So he apparently has a whole
sounds like gobbledygook.
Yeah.
Oh,
no.
If I could ask him a simple question. If he's saying that there's not a single law of identity, what law did he use to identify that position?
That is a beautiful question. Sir.
You see, I love what Jesus did. Jesus did not answer questions directly when he was confronted about reality, about truth, about the scripture. He asked questions. And you know what? This is why I teach as a substitute teacher. I don't give the students the answer. I ask them a question so they can come to the conclusion themselves, and then they can tell me, and then I'll correct them if they're wrong, and then they can know it, and they'll remember it that way too. And you know what? I'm certain Mr. Ra is going to remember this debate.
Oh, I agree. No, this is what we would call in psychology a significant emotional event. This is something that imprints because it was something non-normative to typical cases of interaction. So I truly hope for him
that it was what I would call a transformational truth. When I was an atheist and I became a Christian, I did so because of transformational truth. The truth drew me into Christianity. When I became a Torah observant Christian, it's because of philosophy. It's because what the Bible says, and because I know there cannot be any contradictions. Wait a minute, that's a transformational truth. It will cause you to change. But you know what? The truth, while it will set you free, it will make you very uncomfortable before it does so. I really hope he's uncomfortable right now.
I bet he's getting more uncomfortable by the minute, especially with this stream going on. So I wonder if he's ducked his head in yet. I have to wonder about that myself. Okay, let's get back to the video.
We discover what, and some others we think are on a discovery, and then it turns out no, that's not quite.
Okay, but again, we're talking about the laws.
Formula.
Okay, we're talking about the laws of identity, non-contradiction, and excluded middle. They were discovered, not created.
At all.
Hang on a second.
We're not talking about that.
But wait a minute, you said you were using logic, were you not?
What we were actually talking about was that I asked you a question you artfully dodged about what was the evidence that what was the evidence that implied that we had a creator.
Information, specified complex arrangement of symbols,
So you
irreducibly
specify
complexity,
fallacy.
irreducible complexity in the
Irreducible
systems itself.
complexity would
Sir, can I
prove-
answer the question?
If I
Am I,
answer
please,
hold on a
may,
second.
please, may
I
I?
already told you, irreducible complexity is disproved in science before.
I'm sorry, sir. I can prove it all day long. And you know what? It's not difficult to understand. Absolutely, sir.
Not just to me. Why has it never been proven in peer-reviewed science? You teach science, you understand how science works, right?
It's observable, testable, repeatable. And do you know what we see? We see natural laws. And yet
specified complexity is still fallacious, never demonstrated in science.
So entropy does not exist. Is that correct?
See, does that not sound like scientism to you?
Exactly.
I mean, we can't know anything, including anything in philosophy, because what? Scientism?
Scientism. And then I would ask, well, how do you know that?
Indeed. Yeah. What scientific proof did you come to that conclusion with? Exactly. That's it's a valid question, is it not?
It is. And this is why he keeps dodging the laws of logic, because he knows he has to use them. He has no way of avoiding them. He has no choice in the matter. If they ever change, the physical world doesn't work. His mind itself can't work. It's very interesting.
It is. It is.
So we started this video actually starts halfway through their debate. But just now he claimed that he had asked you that question earlier and that you didn't answer. But I watched it before. Didn't you give the same answer? Pretty much the same answer?
It is. In fact, it's the answer he started with. Yeah, it's the answer he started the video with. Exactly. And he's saying you dodged this question. Like, no, I answered it. And then you made a ridiculous statement about mind being immaterial or something. And we had to go on that tangent. So he's not even following the conversation, frankly.
Well, and he keeps also trying to go back and say that there's contradictions in the Bible. Well, how can you believe this to be true if there's contradictions in the Bible? Oh, wait a minute. Now we're back to truth. What is your definition of truth? And then he avoids that as well.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful point.
Correct?
We're talking about specified complexity now.
Does entropy exist? Because everything decays over time, including...
Oh, wait, let's pause for a second. Mr. Batman, this comment was tailored just for you. We have J.A. Neno in the chat who says, irreducible complexity is creationist nonsense.
Oh,
what's the
I
argument
love that.
for that? That's just the claim. What's the argument for that?
I love that. And I love his little symbol there. Ooh, isn't that so interesting? Well, then I would ask him about our bodies. See, I know a little bit about the circulatory system. I've happened to have had a heart attack. So when you have something like that, you tend to learn more about that particular system. And when you're talking about the system, we're talking about much more than just the three basic parts of that system, which would be the heart, which pumps the blood itself, which takes the oxygen into the body and takes the carbon dioxide out, and then the veins and arteries that allow it to do all that. Which one of those things evolved first, and how do you know? That's a problem. That's an irreducibly complex system. But it gets worse, because guess what? That irreducibly complex system is interdependent upon another irreducibly complex system called the respiratory system. And that respiratory system is interdependent upon the muscular system, which is interdependent upon the nervous system, which is interdependent on the skeletal system. And I could go on and on and on. This whole thing is interdependent. And it's contingent. I kept asking him, this is the argument, contingency. Everything in the physical world is contingent. What is your argument contingent upon?
Beautiful points. I think you sufficiently answered that question.
Thank you.
Well played, sir. Well played.
I'll be right back, but you guys you can continue. Okay.
Oh, are you sure? Because I mean, we can chat. I don't want you to.
No, you can. I'll only be one man. I'm just gonna get a drink.
Okay, no problem. Perfect.
You
All
can
right,
play it.
We'll get back to it.
Including specified complexity, because when you copy something, including information, we have something called genetic entropy. Every time you copy information, when you have a mutation, that mutation is a copying error of the existing working information. And in order to have a copying error of the existing working information, you must first have a self-replicating system. What was the cause of the first self-replicating system? So you can get a mutation and have any of these things that you're talking about.
Beautiful.
Bingo. This is the end of the end of it right here.
Yeah.
Because he's actually already mentioned, I believe earlier, that the driving force or the engine behind evolution is natural selection and mutation. Okay, wait a minute. what are those? He doesn't even understand the definitions. Natural selection. In order for you to have, mutation. In order for you to have mutation, a mutation is, like I said, a copying error. So you must have a self-replicating system, a complete, functional, self-replicating system that is already irreducibly complex. Sounds like created according to the kind, according to what the Genesis version says. But then he also appeals to natural selection. Now, natural selection, it also doesn't work, because in order for you to select for a particular trait or bit of information, it must first exist the selection process. So that means that all that information must be in your genome so it can be selected for by the environmental pressures that allow it to be usable or be functional at that point.
Absolutely. And you know, the greatest thing too, and about this in its simplest form in terms of an idea, is the degrading of information over time.
Yes.
Which leads us to an idea that at some point the information was basically at a better standard, or maybe a greater integrity than what we happen to be able to notice today.
And this is exactly what the Bible says. The Bible says in Genesis that God created everything good. And when he was doing creation, and it's very good. When God calls something very good, it's nigh on close to perfect as it can be. So when Adam and Eve were created, they had the perfect genetic structure, and they lived for nearly 1,000 years. This was another point that I brought up, that again, this information has decayed over time. And genetic entropy, there's actually a book out called Genetic Entropy. And that particular gentleman that wrote that book, he did so because he was doing work in genetics. He was creating something called the gene gun. And as he was doing this research in genetics, he went from being an old Earth, long age evolutionist to being a young Earth creationist because of the information of genetics, because we are decaying over time. Our information is decaying over time, and we will get to a point in the not too distant future where our bodies will no longer be able to be viable for reproduction. That's a problem.
Absolutely. And, you know, it also kind of puts in the ball in his court in a very tough challenge, which is, of course, the idea that we could almost have like a genetic information condensing. Because he likes to make a big thing about incest. It's all over the Bible, you know, and he condemns it and stuff. But, you know, if the reason that incest is so bad and why we associate it as bad and harmful is because we are so genetically watered down. Yes. These days, that when we are now copying, you know, the same genetic code and chromosomes over each other, because we're so genetically watered down, it's the same thing in crossbreeding of dogs or selective breeding of dogs. At a certain point, you'll reach basically a critical junction where basically even the breed is almost not even really tenable. Or even I personally
have a French bulldog, poodles, French bulldogs, things of these natures. Their mutations have been interbred upon one another for so long. If there were no humans around to take care of them and maintain them, they would not exist. As a matter of fact, I've been told, I don't know where this is actually referenced at, but I've been told that the French bulldog has got so many different mutations in it particularly that it won't be around. That particular breed will not be around another 200 years. That's kind of freaky.
You could almost say that it evolved with us in a way, in some sense. And in fact, you know, and actually you guys might be interested in this. I came across an article on National Geographic, some recent new studies they did to the Galapagos finches. And they're finding out increased information by studying the DNA and the chromosomes that they are all descended from a single ancestral finch, but that there's one specific gene inside them that is basically, it's a shared gene that we have that basically governs our skull structure. And that gene is manifest in certain breeds. Guess how? Selective breeding. So they're actually now finding out potentially the Galapagos finches are not a product of evolution at all, just a product of naturally stimulated selective breeding. So exactly. it's like you started with a wolf and you got an island of, you know, pit bulls and you got an island of Dobermans and that type thing. It's basically all it is. And so what I think is maybe missing from the debate about the evolutionary philosophy is how much of what you're discovering is actually just selective breeding. I mean, if you dug up an ancient pit bull and an ancient poodle, would you think they evolved from each other? Is that the conclusion you would bring? And I think they would have to say yes.
That's probably true. Also, before I forget, I noticed somebody in here has recognized me from my previous screen name. I used to go by the Christian Hillbilly, and this particular person calls me Christian Hillbigot. So I think that might be a guy that I've talked with before.
I thought it was on Mouth Talk with us.
Yes, I can't remember what his name was though. But no, I think he's a truck driver, if I remember correctly. But I can't remember his name. But hello, sir. I'm glad you recognize me. Do I look any better? I'm down about 90 pounds.
You know, Mr. Batman lost tons of weight, and he's even skinnier than Aron Ra now.
It's beautiful. Hey, congratulations, sir. Quite a challenge. I did a bit of that myself. I lost 100 pounds last year myself, so I never felt better. Never felt better.
Well, my wife has put me to shame. She has lost 150 pounds, and it's because the doctor really made her mad. He came in and talked to us because we were going to have this surgery. And he says, well, the way you're carrying your weight, you got to lose 5 pounds. Men could do it. You'll be done about a month. You can schedule your surgery. He looks at my wife. He says, now you're carrying all your weight right on top of your liver, the way your body is. And you're going to have to lose 25 pounds. And unfortunately, it's probably going to take you a year. My wife said, oh, no, you didn't. Well, she went home and she changed everything. She got rid of every sugar, every carb. I mean, she lost almost 30 pounds in the first month. She lost almost 70 pounds before her surgery, all due to changing our behavior and our diet.
Absolutely. Even just your relationship with food, really.
I lost tons of weight too, and doesn't it feel great how energetic you feel? I used to be so lazy.
My wife and I, we couldn't hardly walk a couple miles at all. I mean, me being a substitute teacher, if I was in the lower grades, like kindergarten through third grade, I'd walk 5-6 miles a day. But then I'd be exhausted at the end of the day. My wife and I, this week alone, have been riding our bicycles. She rides a bicycle now after having 2 strokes. We ride our bicycles for 5 miles a day. Wow. She's got 2 artificial knees. She's had 2 strokes, lupus, fibromyalgia, and she is really rocking it. The health has come back because we have turned our life around and are eating appropriately.
Robin is a beast. That's outstanding.
I won't tell you how much of a beast she is.
Yeah, I don't want to get you in trouble. She's probably going to
TMI.
She's probably going to see this later. Let's not put you in the doghouse.
The Aron Ra fan in the comments that said the irreducible complexity is creationist garbage or something.
Yeah, we answered that.
Never came back to the argument.
Yeah, no, didn't.
And the guy that was in, did speak to this gentleman. And the reason he heard about that is because of Bob. His name was Bob, and he's a truck driver. Thank you very much. I appreciate you for reminding me. And I used to call him, I used to make up a name for him, but I'm trying to get away from that because I used to be more like Elisha that would, torment the prophets of Baal. He says, hey, where's your God? So I try not to do that as much anymore. I'm trying to be more a relaxed person.
Transgenders, Mr. Batman. I mean, you don't have to respect them or anything, but you're pretty mean.
Yes, I have been. Now, again, I try and be better at that, but I'm sorry. I cannot lie. I will not lie. And when somebody tells me, and I know that they're a man and they're trying to proclaim themselves to be a woman, like maybe Mr. Brenda or Mr. Catherine, again, they are men. They have biological chromosomes that are male. Their skeletal structure is male. Their internal organs are male. They have a dysphoria. They have a software problem, not a hardware problem. You don't go cutting off your mouse when the mouse driver doesn't work.
There's a really funny video on my channel. Mr. Batman is debating 3 transgender atheists at the same time.
No. Oh, I gotta go check that out.
It's not that interesting of a debate, but just the fact that because he's known for his they call him. I've just always said I lack sufficient evidence that you are a different gender than what I see you as. I mean, it's all fine to say and project and want to play in that world, but once you start telling me that I'm forced to play the same game, we're going to have a little bit of a conflict there.
Well, it would be like if I had some type of mental problem, I'm having a delusion, and because I'm having the delusion, I'm going to force you to agree with my delusion regardless of what's going on in the real world in real time. Right. That doesn't work.
And it also carries with it sometimes dangerous implications, on a sociological level, because what ends up happening is some people in the scope of the attempt to try to treat others better, other people are put in danger or not considered. And so, it's dangerous territory. You have to be able to draw a line. And that's why it is so important for us to find objective grounding. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Batman?
Oh, absolutely. You have to have a foundation. And if you get to be the foundation for reality, then guess what? You can make up anything as you go along. If you want to identify as a woman, even though you were born as a man, well, wait a minute. What's going to stop me from identifying as a millionaire and writing $100,000 check? You think the bank's going to cash that? No.
Indeed. It's a good point. That's a good point. All right. We'll let it play some more.
Chemistry, sir, requires laws of chemistry that don't change over time. So again, where do those laws come from?
Okay, I can see we're not going to go anywhere. If something is eternal, it didn't.
But laws of chemistry are not eternal. They're universal and changing. They're universal and changing, but laws of chemistry are not eternal. There are certain laws that are eternal, but there are certain laws that are not eternal.
What about chemistry is not eternal?
Because God created that to dictate how the physical world works.
So again,
laws of logic are eternal, universal, and changing, but laws of chemistry are changeable because God can set them aside. Laws of biology, God could set them aside whenever he wanted to actually have Jesus be born of a virgin. He set the laws of biology aside so that could occur, but he cannot set aside the law of logic.
Except that the